Although he's a science faculty member, I didn't have a class with him. And so some schools specifically say, we want letters of recommendation from professors who have taught you in a science setting. So in that case, it's always safer to go with at least two science professors that have taught you, as opposed to taking that risk. And some schools might not count that as a science faculty letter. So in general, 4 to 6. So 2 science. So again, you want to do well in the class. Generally speaking, A- if you can, because then the professor at least will be able to say, hey, he's a good student. He performed well academically. 2, other sources. So I got a letter from my medical narratives class. So that was kind of like an English class. And that class was nice because it was an upper division class. So there was only like 12 people in the class. So you get to know the professor pretty well, especially over 10 weeks. Volunteering, so if you're a part of any organization, they generally don't want peers to write it, so if you're in a student group, most likely the president and your staff will be peers. So see if you can get someone who either works with the organization, knows your organization well, or someone who sponsors your club to write that letter as opposed to a peer, because that's going to carry more weight. So, and then if you shadow any physician, that's also another option as well. So they can write you a letter. So I've heard different things, like whether you need an MD letter. So if you're applying to medical school, MD medical school specifically, some people say they want at least one MD. I've also known people that have gone into really great schools without an MD letter. So it's kind of like, it's one of those things that you hear. So MD letter is good, but it's not necessary per se. It really depends on the school. So you kind of have to literally do your research, go to school by school and check out what their letters of rec asks for. But generally speaking, aside from that, so research by PI, you would ask a letter from that. And yeah, if you're a part of any other organization, or just basically people who know you well.
One of the things that I really recommend is use your university letter service if you're still an undergrad to store your letters of recommendation. Ask for it, after the class if you're getting it from a professor. So it's at the time when they remember you the best. And the same goes for whether it's anybody affiliated with as faculty with the school to use the letter service to store your letters, because once you come to the MCAS application, you're going to need to be able to access 1 or more copies of confidential letters to be sent to the ANC. And yeah, you maybe can speak more. So I actually didn't use that, and luckily I was still able to get in contact with professors who have written letters for me before, both at Berkeley and at Long Beach City College, and have them write a letter of recommendation. But I took a big risk, and I actually just didn't know that much about the letter service until my last year. So it's something I strongly encourage you to utilize. You can also use, if you're alumni, you can use the Career Center. You can still get access to the letter service, but you just have to check in with your university. Another company that stores your letters of rec, confidential letters of rec, is Interfolio, and ANC accepts. It's pretty well integrated if you do get your letters of recommendation. You have them sent via Interfolio. So Interfolio will essentially mediate the letter request process on your behalf. They'll send an email to the professor. You'll manually send an email to the professor, and the professor will upload their letter of recommendation to the Interfolio website without you seeing it. So, and then it's pretty easy to then forward it to the ANC. But yeah, that's right.
So also letters of rec, you want to ask them right away when you're taking the class, because so let's say you're applying this June, right, or next June per se. If you ask them in a year and a half after you've taken the class, like they might not remember you as well, so they might not be able to write as strong of a letter as if you ask them immediately. So you want to ask them right away. You can always later say, like, you know, say if you ask for a letter now, when you're applying it next year, and you can say, hey, you know, I had a letter of rec from you last year. I was wondering if you could update it with these activities I've done, or just simply changing the date, right? So you want your letters recent, but one way to do that is to ask for it right when you take a class, and then, you know, the following year ask for it to be updated. So I personally have used Interfolio. It's kind of convenient because it's all electronic, whereas letter service, they usually send it to the school, and then the school uploads it, but sometimes, like UCLA for instance, I believe they don't send in your letters until all the letters come in. So if you have one professor lagging your application, that, you know, could be something that's a disadvantage. So, you know, just think about that. Interfolio, I think, is like $40 for 3 years, so it's not too much, considering what it is. I think UCLA's was like, after you graduate, $25 a year, I forgot the actual price, but something like that. So you may wonder, why don't you send the letters directly to the med school application service, you know, period, right? You just save the middle person and you know when the letters are sent. So the problem is, when you do that, one, the professors have to send in all their materials, you know, with an envelope or something. So you risk getting it lost if you don't certify the mail. Two, if you have to reapply, those letters might not be there next year, right? You're gonna have to ask them again. And, you know, it's more inconvenient if one of our professors retired, happened to just retire in that year after I asked them for a question, or after I asked them for a letter, right? So things like that, you know, it's sometimes difficult to get a hold of professors after the fact. So that's why I think it'd be more convenient to use either the school letter service or Interfolio. So.
Question.
Yeah.
I have a question for Sivan. So I also went to the community college for the first 2 years. So I don't know how is it. How I have one professor. I have a really good in non-science. So how do they impact it to the application? Are they still considered the same way with the professor like from Berkeley or UCLA, or how they view the letter compared to the other professor at the university level?
I see. So how they view community college letter versus a university letter. So, you know, there are a couple things. I think if you have a strong letter is a strong letter. It's going to come across. What is the advantage of getting it from the university you transfer to is, one, that it's more recent. And then two is that you're taking upper division courses. So you're taking generally more advanced, specialized courses. And so those really hard science, I guess, hard general courses are, I've read are, I guess, you know, considered, and it just happens to do with what kind of classes you take at City College, which are the core classes. And I think it would be the same thing if you were to take all the courses at a university. I mean, the more recent letters they're gonna think it's gonna better reflect on who you are in the application cycle. Yeah, I mean, as long as if they know you well. You do want, I tried to get letters from both schools, so make sure you either have the same amount of letters from each, you know, professor from your city college, if you can get a strong letter from them, and one from your transferring university. So that's, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So right now we're going to take a quick break. It's a lot of information that just came at you right now. So let's go ahead. Helen and Lynn will be leading the break. So go ahead and